Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Ajoe21love. Here up with another episode of Sports Review Topics, episode number 98. A little bit later, but nonetheless, here to give you a good edition of today's podcast. Got a bunch to talk over for today. The NFL draft, how it affected my power rankings, and which teams moved up, which teams moved down, who to really look out for as a sleeper, and much more, if anything really changed. UFC 274, it happened. Give my thoughts on that. Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira, Justin Yaichi, Carlos Esparza, and what's next for the UFC lightweight title now that it's vacant. Along with much more, give my thoughts on the MLB and how the NBA playoffs have been going, and much more. But thank you all. If you're new to the podcast, same spiel. If you want to see more sports review topics, videos, you can find those on the homepage. Click the description there on the right hand corner. That will take you to homepage, subscribe, find all the videos that you please. But thank you, and one sec. Yeah, take care. One sec. There we go. But nonetheless, with that out of the way, let's dive into the podcast now, shall we? UFC 274. It happened over the weekend, and solid show, solid pay-per-view, had some unique finishes and a bit of controversy for the UFC. So, the day before for the UFC, they have two weigh-ins. They used to only have one, but they have two weigh-ins. They have the weigh-ins in the morning, and then the ceremonial weigh-ins the night before. So there's that. They use, I think, a good, better way than how it was before, considering only the night, but I think it was well. So, but at the early weigh-ins on Friday, also happy Mother's Day, post Mother's Day. Hope everyone's mothers and all out there had a great Mother's Day. But nonetheless, at the early weigh-ins, Charles Oliveira, the then current 155-pound champion, lightweight champion of the UFC, set to defend the lightweight title against Justin Yaichi Saturday night, but still faced Yaichi. Missed weight by a pound. Now, for UFC, the UFC weight limit for non-title fights is obviously different. You know, you can go over by a pound, pretty much for non-title UFC belts or MMA belts. Here, with a title belt, you have to be right on the weight limit. And Charles Oliveira missed weight, the limit 155. He weighed in at 156. He got an opportunity to try to cut that 1 pound. He apparently lost half of it, but so a half a pound over 155 and a half. You know, Daniel Cormier and some of the guys said best, I'm willing to believe that, in the past, that some champions have gotten the pass, as in being a little over the weight limit, and they don't want to have that unknown for the UFC and for title belts. But the case was here, and Oliveira was stripped his belt. So he was still set to face Yaichi, but only Yaichi, who weighed in at 155, would be able to win the title, otherwise it would be vacant. So there was that. A weird way to enter UFC 274. And then also a fight that was supposed to kick off the main show. Longtime legend of the sport, Donald Cerrone, facing against fellow longtime UFC veteran Joe Lozon. The fight was set. Weigh-ins went well. But unfortunately, Don Cerrone, or Cowboy, fell with an illness on the day of, actually a few hours before, the pay-per-view of UFC 274, and the fight was scrapped from the main card, and same with Joe Lozon. So hopefully Cowboy, everything's alright with him and he gets there ASAP. But I mean, the older you get, the cutting weight is much more of an issue on one's body, and it's a detriment. And I'm not saying this was related to the weight cut, because we know how Cowboy has had issues at 155, and we know he went up to 170 for a bit, had great success or pretty good success at 170, but ultimately came back down, and there was that. But, same for Joel Lozon. It was obviously going to be a fight that you were going to be not happy either way, because they're legends of the sport, and they're obviously at the end of their careers, and you want both to go out with a bang. That's pretty much it. But Still, we got 4 other good fights. The main card: OSP versus Shogun, who, also, like both guys, OSP, Shogun, both been around the block many times. Shogun, former champion, has doing it for a long time since Pride, and OSP, Mr. Von Flu choke or Von Prue, whichever they want to call it, the choke. But nonetheless, it was a rematch. OSP won with a decision, and decent fight. The big outcome of UFC 274, I would say, was Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson, El Kukui. Michael Chandler, he was obviously in Bellator for a long time. Coming to the UFC, how would he respond to the difference in competition? Right out of the gates, he knocked out Dan Hooker, stopped him, got a shot for the vacant UFC lightweight title versus Charles Oliveira, which came close, but ultimately Oliveira got the W. Then late last year, he had the fight of the year with Justin Yaichi. Ultimately lost in a decision to that. So 1-2, not a good start for Iron Michael Chandler, but this was definitely a way to get back on the horse for Chandler. And it was a hell of a fight versus Tony Ferguson. Tony, El Kukui, he's a personality. He's different. Very good fighter. Obviously, we know he's on that long win streak. We never got to see him fight Khabib, which is unfortunate to say the least. And then recently, losing to Justin Yaichi in a stand-up war, and then losing a decisive decision to Charles Oliveira. And it is how it goes. So Tony as well had to regroup and find a way to respond. So this fight, in a way, made sense. And Tony early had good success. He chipped Chandler with a good shot, and then sent Chandler back up against the cage. Tony went for on the offensive, but unfortunately, so Tony was taken down and started using those elbows that he does very well from the bottom. And Chandler tried to take back the round, but still did well. So that was a hell of a first round. Then 17 seconds. For those who watched, we saw Vitor Belfort not once but twice got unceremoniously decked with the front kick KO. First by Anderson Silva when he was more in his prime, and then against Leo Machida. That was scary as well, but this, wow. Michael Chandler's not known for his kicks. I even said they don't practice it much. But I saw the opening front kick, which flat, and Tony Ferguson out cold. Michael Chandler gets the knockout finish, and Chandler is victorious over El Kukui. Afterwards, he called out the winner of the main event and Conor McGregor. Both fights I'll enjoy. I mean, Chandler, great fighter, has a knockout ability as well as being a good wrestler. So, I mean, I would not mind seeing a rematch between. Get to it a bit. So, the co-main event. Speaking of rematches, this was a rematch of the first UFC strawweight title bout between Carlos Esparza and Rose Namajunas. Carlos Esparza, obviously the first UFC strawweight champion. Here she faced Rose Namajunas, coming off Rose's second reign as champion. After that big knockout over Weili Zhang, here she wanted to avenge a loss to Carlos Esparza, and judging from it, there wasn't a lot to it, but Carlos Esparza, congrats to her. She dug deep and is now a two-time UFC strawweight champion. She won a decision. Carla tried using her wrestling more, got many of her takedown attempts stuffed. She did take her down a few times. Rose, we know, is very tactical on the feet. It wasn't an eventful fight. It was just a little sad. But congrats to, you always get one of those once in a while. Just a stinker, and Carla got the W, so good for her. Main events. So Charles Oliveira versus Justin Yaichi. This definitely was an anticipated bout, because Justin, I mentioned earlier, he won that stand-up war versus Tony Ferguson. Although it was more one-sided, but still, Tony showed heart. But beat Tony in that interim title fight. Lost to Khabib, or got choked out by Khabib despite having some success with leg kicks. Here, against Charles, It was a strange bout. Strange, but very good for while it lasted. So, Yaichi, we know he loves to brawl. He has that, like, Vanderlei Silva in him. He loves to brawl. He loves to get in and there, make it ugly. So, he managed to hurt Oliveira, but Oliveira, despite that great jiu-jitsu, he is good on the feet. He's not great, but he's good. And he knocked down Yaichi, and then, with a guy who has the most submissions in UFC history, Charles pounced on him and choked him out in the first round. Coach Charles, but at the same time, I'm a bit disappointed as a Justin Gaethje fan. I mean, this is second chance at the UFC title, and he comes up short. Just unfortunate, but just the way it goes. Just the way it goes. But, now the UFC title is vacant. There are a couple ways the UFC could go about this. They could do a rematch between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. I would be down for that. Because we know Chandler was winning that fight, but unfortunately he made that silly decision as to go to the ground with Oliveira. They could do I don't think this would be where they're headed, because we know about the UFC that styles make fights. So Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev, I don't think would be in the cards, although Makhachev is up there in the lightweight division. There's that. I would like to see, what we've seen the last two title fights for Gaethje is that Gaethje, against a very skillful jiu-jitsu guy, gets submitted. So against Makhachev, I'm not sure if that would be a good fight for Gaethje, but we'll see. But there are some good possibilities for the UFC when it comes to their next move for the lightweight strap. NFL Power Rankings. Okay, so now when I made my pre-draft Power Rankings, I went too long. I apologize. And this time around, I will just make some nitpick points. By the way, so for my pre-draft Power Rankings, I went too long and didn't go through my final five. So just want to clarify. So Jets, Bears, Lions, Texans, Giants, Falcons were my final five teams. But after draft, and I get it, people are nitpicky about the draft because you don't see them play until they're actually on the field, so you know who won and who lost. But this my just my consensus about the teams that I feel got better during the draft, and many people moved up. Some pretty much fairly stayed the same. So let's just roll through it. So my top 5 really stayed the same at the top. I still got the Rams, Bengals, Bills, Bucks, Chiefs at 5. Although I did have some thought, because Chiefs and the Bills, I thought, nailed it with some of their picks. Bills game, Kyer Elam, long rangey corner, James Cook, Dalvin Cook's brother. Thought that was very good. The Bengals had a very good defense draft as well, but I don't think it really put them over the Rams. Chiefs, they got McDuffie and Karlaftis, Moore. They got some good stout talent in the draft, but it was just hard to put them, or difficult rather, to move them in the top 5 when really there was no impact, really, players that anybody took. At 6 was really when the movement started happening. So I moved the Raiders up 2 spots from 8 to 6. They didn't really do much in the draft, but I think just with the way the roster is, and I felt the 49ers and the Titans, who I had at 6, kind of took a blow, although they still really did nothing. But I think it was more about teams, just I'm high on the Raiders. That's pretty much it. I moved the Cardinals up 3 spots from 10 to 7. Hollywood Brown, Trey McBride, 2 big moves on offense, provided. Now, DeAndre Hopkins, is going to miss the first 6 games of the regular season with that suspension, but nonetheless, when you combine that firepower for Kyler Murray in the offense, I think you're just warranted to move them up. I did move the Packers up 1 spot to 8. They did have some good, their top 3 picks, I thought, very good, very good. Quay Walker, bit surprise. I thought he was more of a day 2 guy, but nonetheless, you couldn't go wrong picking a guy on that Georgia defense. Devontae Wyatt, I'm surprised he lasted that long, but he did. and another Georgia Bulldog, Christian Watson. I'm glad because they could have gotten greedy and desperate and took him in the first round, but they stood pat. They waited, took Walker and Wyatt, and ultimately took Watson in the second round. It's good on their part. And I think he'll be vastly good for the Packers. 49ers moved down 2 spots to 9. I probably could have kept him above the Raiders, but I mean, hearing about Trey Lance, the reports about Trey Lance, and then the Jimmy Garoppolo thing, it's just not working for me, and I'm just a little nervous about the 49ers. Titans, I had them trailing, obviously. Moved them 4 spots down to 10. Traylon Burks, Hassan Haskins, and Roger McCreary. I thought good picks. Obviously the biggest news day one of the draft that Titans trade AJ Brown to Eagles and he got a big extension. So I don't think Traylon Burks is going to be as good as AJ Brown, but I don't think there's going to be a big gap. So for Titans, I wish they could have went with an lineman, but with the AJ Brown situation, with the Chargers taking Zion, I mean, I guess made sense. Browns had sent Pat at 11, and then started a surge again throughout the draft or the power rankings. So Chargers, I moved up 3 spots, 15 to 12. I mean, Zion Johnson, I mean, that line is just, it's going to be hard to find a weak link in that O-line now. So with Justin Herbert upright, it's going to be difficult. Colts, I moved up 3 spots. I thought they had some sneaky acquisitions for the draft. I mean, Bernard Raymond, he just kept falling, and him going to the Colts was probably the best case scenario. Alec Pierce as well. Good wide receiver from Cincinnati. Pairing him up with Michael Pittman, that's going to be good with Matt Ryan to pair with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. So good stuff. Broncos moved up 3 spots from 17 to 14. They didn't do a lot, but I did like a few of their picks. A lot of this power rankings was mostly about teams getting better, some teams taking a few steps back, and teams just really staying the same. So Broncos up 3 spots. The Saints were my biggest riser in the power rankings. I moved them up from 21 to 15, 6 spots. I just, they hit the nail on the head with their first round picks. They only had 5 picks, but Chris Olave pairing him with Michael Thomas, along with Alvin Kamara in the backfield. Trevor Penning getting him to replace Teron Armstead, pairing him up with Ramczyk. If you want Jameis to really succeed, you're going to have to keep him upright. And those are 2 very solid picks for the Saints. Ravens, I moved up 2 spots from 18 to 16. They were difficult to figure out because they had a great defensive draft. They had a great defensive draft with Hamilton, Ajoe, Travis Jones, but they gave up Hollywood Brown, and I mean, you don't really have a lot of experience on the offensive side. Of course, we know how the offense is run through with Lamar Jackson with that run game. The running backs will come back. And of course, you saw Mark Andrews, but I mean, it's a bit difficult to assess. Patriots, I had dropping 3 spots, 14 to 17. They're still a good team to me and still have a good core, but we know what to draft for the Patriots. I mean, they did have some good moves. I did like some of their moves, but I don't think they really got a game changers in the draft. Eagles. So moved up 2 spots from 20 to 18. I mean, they just, if you count A.J. Brown along with Jordan Davis, I mean, geez, they got one hell of a team building around. The question is obviously Jalen Hurts, but, real kudos to them for the Eagles. I mean, geez. Steelers and Cowboys, I had fallen quite a bit. I mean, Steelers dropped 6 spots. Cowboys dropped 8. With Cowboys, I don't think they really did. They didn't really improve. I don't think. Same with Patriots. But, well, Patriots, I liked some of their moves. Cowboys, I just scratched my head with them. Steelers, I want to move them up, but with the way some teams just operate, I think I just ultimately moved them down. Dolphins moved down 2 spots. Commanders Vikings, 1 spot. Lions, I boosted up quite a bit. I very much enjoyed their draft. Very much enjoyed the draft. Moved up 5 spots from 29 to 24. You know, Jared Goff, I don't think people really. He's not a great quarterback, but, you know, getting Hutchinson because really they haven't had a real defensive presence since Ziggy Ansah and Ndamukong Suh. They haven't really had a defensive presence on the front seven. Now you draft Hutchinson. Getting Jameson Williams, trading with the Vikings, 20 spots to get Jameson Williams was a bold move, but they went with it, and you look at their offensive core of weapons. Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, Jameson Williams, TJ Hawkinson. I mean, you got DeAndre Swift in the backfield. I mean, there's that. Jets, I moved up 1 spot. 26. You know, I was very fond of the draft as well. Texans moved up 3 spots from 30 to 27. You know, yes, I'm more of a believer in the Texans and where the direction they're headed, but unfortunately, they still got improvement that awaits them. But still at 27. Panthers, I dropped 3 spots. You know, Aquano I like, but there's still those unknowns with Sam, Darnold. They did get Matt Corral. We'll see. But Christian McCaffrey, I mean, it's just unknowns with Carolina. Seahawks bumped down to 3 spots, 29. Giants have moved slightly up to 30 because I loved Evan Neal and I loved Kayvon Thibodeau, but Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley could both very well not be on the team next year, and that's unfortunate. Bears, don't get mad at me, Bears fans, but I dropped 3 spots to 31. I did like Kyler Gordon and Felix Jones, but same, not really any game changers in the draft. Looks to be Falcons, Sam Pat at 32, but we'll see. Prove me wrong, Bears fans. Prove me wrong, Falcons. But anywho, those are my post-draft power rankings. Some moved up, some moved down. Biggest riser was Saints. Biggest faller was the Cowboys. Pretty much no surprise. But there was that. There was that. Some may agree, some may disagree. Although, with the Lions, you know, could have moved them up more. Could have moved them up more. But, oh well. But, good stuff there. So, we got a bunch of competitive series now in the NBA playoffs. You know, we have 3 2-2 series in the semifinals. 3 2-2 series and 1 3-1 series based on last night. The 76ers were down 2-0 against the Miami Heat. Joel Embiid comes back. They won 2 straight, and now it's 2-2. The Phoenix Suns were ahead 2-0 on the Dallas Mavericks. Luka Doncic, Jalen Brunson, Dinwiddie, Kleba, they all say, wait. They win 2 straight. And we got 2-2 series there. Celtics, as of last night, said, hold on. It's now 2-2. Boston and Milwaukee, despite being 3-1, it's a pretty up and down series, I would say, between the Grizzlies and the Warriors. I mean, as expected, no John Morant last night. So it was a bit unfortunate for the Grizzlies, but still was a compelling game in Game 4. We'll see how his status is the rest of the series, but big blow for Memphis. But yeah, I'm starting to get a little nervous about my Phoenix Suns, Miami Heat NBA Finals prediction, but we'll see. It's going to be a fun rest of the way, so we'll see. Byron Buxton for the Minnesota Twins has still been compelling. Him getting another home run and Minnesota Twins victory yesterday. The Yankees sitting pretty right behind their 2 big scorers, Anthony Rizzo and Aaron Judge. It's been an interesting start for the MLB. Despite DeGrom being out, the New York Mets have been solid behind their core. Alonso, Scherzer, bunch of good. So holding out the fort for the Mets. Feel bad for the Reds. Milwaukee Brewers doing well. Dodgers are still the Dodgers. Glad to see for the Angels that Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani are both healthy. With both of them healthy, the Angels can beat anyone. So, a compelling start to the MLB season. Before I go, I want to leave with this because this has been an interesting edition of the podcast, but I want to leave with this. So, Ryan Tannehill, of course, I mentioned the Titans a bunch on this podcast for you football fans. I mentioned the A.J. Brown trade earlier, but of course we know the other big acquisition for the Titans was trading up in the third round to draft Malik Willis out of Liberty. And of course we know Ryan Tannehill, laid an egg against the Bengals in the playoffs. And he was asked about Malik the other day, and he responded saying it's not his job to mentor him, but if he learns something from Ryan, then that's a great thing. And you've heard some comments from Kurt Warner, from Mike Tomlin. I mean, about the situation. Ryan Tannehill is not wrong in this scenario and what he said. And, I get people still want to bag on him because his contract and the way he looked in Cincy, but he's not wrong in what he said. Ryan Tannehill has a big contract, and he's looking to be the best he can be. He's not looking to breed a guy to take his job. And I get that because he's not at the end of his career. He's still a good quarterback, and he's still got many years left at only 33 years old. So I think he's still got plenty in the tank. So, I mean, he's not going to encourage him to take his job, but I'm sure Malik will probably ask something, have some questions that Ryan will oblige to answer and whatnot. But that was a little silly for people to be pouncing on this story, but it is what it is. But nonetheless, that's the episode for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Covered a bunch today on the episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, click that like, leave a thumbs up for the video. But good stuff on the podcast today. Thursday. I know the international games and that stuff has come out, but I want to leave that to next week's podcast because next week, or this Thursday rather, the NFL schedule for 2022 comes out on Thursday. And next week, I give my recap and hopefully predictions for the NFL teams and international games, everything. Fine. On next week's podcast. So tune in next week. But thank you all. Be safe. See you next time. I'm Ajoe21love. Peace.